Dad lifted his glass mid-dinner and smiled at the table like he was hosting his own show. He looked at my sister Opal first, long and warm, the kind of look he saved for things he was proud of. "One daughter has class," he announced. Murmurs of approval moved around the table. People nodding, agreeing, performing the appreciation he expected. Then he turned to me. Eyes bright with that specific sparkle. The one that meant something unkind was coming and he'd already decided it was funny. "And one has drama." The laughter that followed was thin and obedient, the kind people produced when they were scared of silence, when they didn't know what else to do with what they'd just witnessed. My cheeks burned. My hands went cold around my fork. Dad watched my face carefully, waiting for the reaction he could point to. "See," he'd say. "See what I mean?" Opal's mouth twitched. Half smile, half warning. I swallowed hard, forced my face completely calm, because if I reacted, he won. He'd call it evidence. He'd call it proof of everything he'd ever said about me. But inside, something locked into place. If he wanted to call me drama, I was going to let him hear himself say it. "My name is Calix Arden. My father has been calling my pain drama since I was old enough to have pain worth labeling." In the bathroom, I gripped the edge of the sink, breathed slowly through the sting behind my eyes, listened to the sounds coming from the dining room. Dad's laugh, glasses clinking, Opal's soft voice smoothing something over. When I walked back out, Dad patted my shoulder, loud enough for people nearby to hear. "Good job staying calm," he said cheerfully. Calm, like he was grading me, scoring my performance. I smiled, nodded, sat back down. My chest was tight, but my mind felt strangely clear. He wanted me emotional. He needed me emotional. That was the whole system. When I cried or got angry or said something sharp, he had his evidence. He could shake his head and explain to everyone that this was what he dealt with, that he tried, that it was simply how I was. But I wasn't going to fight him with emotion tonight. I was going to fight him with something he'd never seen coming. Reality. Documentation. His own words. The game he'd been playing assumed I never learned the rules. He was about to find out how wrong that assumption was. Opal found me in the hallway before I reached the door. She kept her voice low, urgent, her expression the same one she wore when something was about to cost her effort she didn't want to spend. "Please don't make this a thing," she whispered. The words hit harder than Dad's joke had. "A thing," I repeated quietly. "You know how he gets when someone reacts," Opal said. "It just gets worse. He digs in." I looked at my sister. "You mean he gets worse when I respond to being publicly humiliated?" Opal flinched. "I didn't say that. And you know how I get labeled when I don't respond," I said. "Difficult, dramatic, a problem he generously manages." She pressed her lips together, looked away. "Just let it go," she whispered. "It's easier." "Easier for who?" I didn't say it out loud. I kept it inside my chest where it burned cleanly. I just nodded, watched her relax with relief, watched her believe she'd solved something. Then I walked to my car. Opal wasn't cruel. That was the hardest part. She was conditioned. Dad had taught her, slowly and thoroughly, that peace only arrived when I stayed quiet. She believed that, completely, and he had built that belief on purpose. On the drive home, my mind pulled up an old memory. Dad's face after my parents' divorce, me sitting at the kitchen table crying. He'd looked at me, without warmth, and said, "If you keep doing this, people will start thinking you're unstable." Unstable. His favorite word for the years that followed. He didn't hold me, didn't ask what hurt. He coached me into being quiet so he could stand beside me in public and look like the reasonable parent. That was when the label started. Not because I was dramatic, because I was human. That night, I went through my phone. Old voicemails I'd saved without fully knowing why. Like something had been collecting evidence before my conscious mind understood the need. I found one from 3 years ago. Dad's voice. Flat and certain. "Stop acting crazy. You always do this when people are watching." I listened to it twice. People are watching. He hadn't said it as a comfort. He'd said it as a strategy. Like my grief was a PR problem he was managing. Like my feelings only mattered in terms of how they made him look in front of an audience. I saved the voicemail to a new folder. Opened a new document. Started writing down dates. The text came the next morning at 9:14. "Dad, proud of you for not embarrassing yourself last night." I read it 3 times. Not embarrassing yourself. Like my basic presence at a dinner table was something I could fail at. Like sitting quietly while he insulted me had been a performance I'd passed. I didn't reply. I screenshot it, saved it to my folder, named the folder Evidence. The name made my hands tremble, because naming it, that felt like admitting something out loud, like acknowledging that I was documenting my own father. That the word evidence had become necessary in the context of family dinner. But then my phone buzzed again. Dad. Opal has class, that's all I'll say. I sat with that for a moment. He wasn't done. He was continuing the conversation through text now, because he'd sensed something different last night. Sensed that I hadn't folded the way I usually did. When control started slipping, he doubled down. I recognized the pattern now. He wasn't trying to hurt me. He was trying to get me back under management. And I was done being manageable. I saved the second screenshot, added it to the folder, and started thinking about what came next. My supervisor called me into her office on a Tuesday afternoon. She looked careful. Professional in the particular way that meant she was uncomfortable with the conversation she needed to have. We received a call last week, she said, from someone who had some concerns. My stomach dropped. What kind of concerns? She hesitated. About your emotional stability. They said they were family. My mouth went completely dry. I'm sorry that happened, I said. Kept my voice level, steady. My work performance is documented. I'm happy for you to review anything. She nodded, said it was fine, said she just wanted me to know. I sat in my car in the parking garage afterward, hands shaking in my lap. He had called my workplace. He had introduced himself as family and used that word the way he used all his words, as a weapon, wearing helpful clothing. That night, Dad called at 7. Cheerful voice, easy tone. How was your day? I said, calm and direct. Don't contact my workplace again. Brief silence, then he laughed. Warm, amused. Drama, he said, like it was a joke between friends. My skin went completely cold. He had done it, and he was laughing about it. My friend Nix told me something I hadn't known. In our state, recording a phone call was legal with the consent of one party. The person recording counted as the consenting party. My stomach turned over when Nix said it. The idea sat uncomfortably in my chest. Recording, my own father. Keeping audio files of his voice saying things. But my survival instincts were louder than my discomfort. When Dad called again 3 days later, I hit record. He started soft, almost warm. Then he slid into the familiar groove. People are worried about you, Calix. You spiral, you always have. Spiral, said like a medical fact. I kept my voice completely neutral. What do you actually want from me? He laughed, light, practiced. I want you to stop making me look bad. That's genuinely all I'm asking. Not look bad. Not making me look bad. The whole enterprise was about his image, not my well-being, not my growth, not any version of a father wanting something good for his daughter. His image. I ended the call, sat very still, saved the file, named it Image. The first piece of clear, audible proof that his drama narrative wasn't about my behavior at all. It was about control. My aunt called me on a Saturday morning. She started the conversation warmly, then said something that knocked the air out of me completely. I sent your father some money this month to help with your situation. I gripped the phone. My situation? I said carefully. He said you were struggling again, that you needed support but were too proud to ask directly. The room felt like it was tilting. Again. He'd used the word again, which meant this wasn't the first time he'd had this conversation with someone. I took a slow breath. Aunt, I'm not struggling. I've been paying my own bills for 3 years. I didn't know about this call. I haven't received any money. Silence. Her voice changed, became smaller. He said he was managing it on your behalf. On your behalf. After the call, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. This was no longer just cruel comments at dinner. It wasn't just workplace interference or controlling texts. He had been collecting money from relatives by presenting my name and my supposed suffering as the reason to give. And I had never seen any of it. I added the screenshot to my folder with shaking hands. This was fraud wrapped inside fatherhood. Dad called 2 days after I spoke with my aunt. I recognized the particular quality of his voice immediately. The low, careful tone he used when he suspected something had changed and wanted to locate the damage. I heard you've been talking to people, he said. I've been clarifying some things, I said. His tone cooled. If you keep doing that, I'll tell everyone the truth about you. My hands tightened. You mean you'll call me dramatic? He chuckled. See? You always do this. Then he said it so calmly it almost sounded casual. You always take the bait, Calix. That's what makes it so easy. My blood went cold. He knew he was baiting me. Had always known. He had designed the provocation deliberately and had been watching me react to it for years with something that felt like satisfaction. Not because he wanted conflict, but because conflict gave him control. As long as I was reacting, he was managing. I ended the call, saved the recording immediately, named the file, bait, sat on my kitchen floor for a while, and understood with absolute clarity that I had been playing a game I hadn't known the rules of, until now. I met Opal for coffee a week later. I kept it gentle, showed her the message my aunt had sent, the one about the money Dad had collected. Let Opal read it herself. Her face tightened as she read. You wouldn't do that, she said. Automatic. Before she'd finished reading, I pointed to the screenshot. It's right there. Opal's eyes moved across the screen, then flicked away. Like looking too long was a risk. Maybe Aunt misunderstood what he meant. My chest ached, because I knew this response, had heard versions of it my whole life from this family. When reality was uncomfortable, someone found the interpretation that preserved the comfort. If I'm just being dramatic, I said quietly, why is he using my name to collect money from relatives? Opal's voice cracked slightly. Can we not do this right now? Not right now meant not ever. It meant please do not make me see this clearly because seeing it would cost me something I'm not ready to pay. I nodded, packed up my phone, left with my throat tight and something important confirmed. Dad's cruelty wasn't even my biggest obstacle. The family's collective, determined blindness was. Over the following weeks, Dad kept testing. Small jabs in the family group chat. A joke at my expense during a Sunday video call. Late-night texts designed to land when my defenses were lowest. Observations sent as questions. Questions shaped to sting. I stopped responding emotionally to any of it. When he texted something designed to provoke, I didn't answer. When he made a comment on the group chat, I let it sit. When the bait arrived, I documented it and moved on. Each time he escalated, I added another piece to my folder. A voicemail where he said, I only called your employer because I was worried. I was being protective. A text where he wrote, if you'd stop being so dramatic, people would naturally like you more. A message to a second relative, almost identical to the one my aunt had received. My folder grew heavier, but my hand stopped shaking when I saved files. That was the shift I hadn't expected. For years I'd been trying to hold his moods, anticipate his reactions, adjust myself to fit the space he'd defined for me. Now I was holding something solid instead. Documentation. Dates. His own words in his own voice. And that felt completely different from anything I'd felt before. Dad announced a formal dinner 3 weeks later. A nice restaurant. Business formal dress. His new partner's friends would be there. A stage. Of course. He wanted to perform calm father and classy daughter for a new audience. Opal texted me separately. Please just be normal tomorrow. Normal. The word that in this family always meant pretend nothing happened. Accept the label. Keep the performance running smoothly. I replied, I'll be calm. Opal sent a heart emoji back within seconds, relieved. She thought calm meant compliant. She thought I'd slipped back into my role. I hadn't. I was calm the way a person was calm when they had a plan. When the preparation was finished, and everything was in its place, and the only remaining step was execution. I was calm the way the eye of a storm was calm. Not empty. Centered. I started organizing what I needed. Thought about what Nix had said about clarity, about keeping it clean, about not turning it into a dramatic confrontation, but making it something else entirely. Something impossible to dismiss. Something that stood entirely on its own. I met Nix for coffee the week before the dinner. We sat in the back corner of a quiet place, and I played the recording softly through my phone speaker. Nix listened to each one carefully. Didn't interrupt, just nodded with a face that stayed controlled and professional, even as I watched something harden behind their eyes. The bait clip is the strongest, Nix said. Clear admission of intent. I nodded. The image clip is important too, shows this isn't about you. And the money messages? Those are the ones that will matter most to relatives, Nix said. Personal, specific, hard to misinterpret. We talked about order, about what the goal was, not a screaming confrontation. Not a public humiliation that could be reframed as me melting down and proving his point. Something clean, precise, evidence presented calmly. You need to stay completely calm the entire time, Nick said. The moment you get emotional, the story shifts back to him. I already knew that. I practiced the opening sentences until they felt like breathing. Then I prepared the 2 envelopes, one for my aunt, one for the second relative. Repayment checks. Because I refused to let his lies stain them. It was not about revenge. It was about truth standing on its own feet. The week before the dinner, Dad began his preparation. I heard about it through 2 different relatives in the span of 4 days. He was telling people I was in a phase again. He mentioned to a cousin that I'd been difficult lately, and that he was trying to be patient. That he hoped the evening wouldn't become uncomfortable. A cousin warned me directly. Sent me a voice note. He said he's worried you're going to cause a scene. I smiled when I listened to it. He was laying groundwork, pre-building the narrative so that when I spoke, the room would already be primed to read it as instability, as another calyx moment. When the moment arrived and I showed evidence, his version of events would already be in circulation, his interpretation already offered to the jury. I texted the cousin back. I won't cause a scene. And it was completely true. I wasn't causing anything. I was ending something. There was a difference, a significant one. Scenes were chaotic and emotional and disorganized. They gave observers the option to look away or dismiss what they'd witnessed. What I was planning wasn't a scene, it was a presentation. Dad's new partner Veda pulled me aside at a smaller family gathering the week before the formal dinner. She was careful, measured, like someone who had been thinking about what she wanted to say for a while and was still deciding how much. He talks about you quite a bit, she said. I waited. He describes you as fragile, she continued. Like you're someone who needs managing. The word fragile landed on me the way it always did, like a diagnosis applied without examination. I looked at her. Do I seem fragile to you? She held my gaze for a long moment. No, she said. You seem tired. Something loosened in my chest at that. The specific relief of being seen accurately by someone who had no reason to perform a particular version of you. I've been tired for a long time, I said. Veda nodded. Her eyes were soft in a way that told me she was paying close attention to things Dad assumed she wasn't. I don't enjoy the way he talks about you, she said quietly. I want you to know that. That small, private validation felt like air coming into a room that had been sealed too long. It also told me something important. Dad's mask was cracking at the edges. A second relative reached out to me 7 days before the formal dinner. Different person. Similar message. They had sent Dad money the previous year. For my therapy, he'd told them. I was spiraling, he'd said. He was trying to quietly support me without embarrassing me by asking directly. I paid for my own therapy. I had receipts. I asked for screenshots of Dad's messages. They sent them. Same language, same framing, same word. Spiraling again. I'm trying to help her. Anything you can contribute would mean a lot. 2 relatives, different months, the same script. I added the screenshots to my folder. The folder had grown from a collection of hurt feelings into something else entirely. Something with weight and structure and chronological clarity. It stopped feeling like an act of aggression. It started feeling like self-defense, like building a wall not to attack anyone, but simply to have something solid between me and what had been happening. Every file was a brick. Every dated screenshot was a fact I owned completely. And facts were the one thing he couldn't reframe, couldn't laugh away, couldn't call dramatic, couldn't dismiss as me taking the bait. The night before the formal dinner, Dad texted at 10:45. Just making sure you know tomorrow isn't about you. Please don't embarrass Opal. She's worked hard to have the reputation she has. Don't embarrass Opal. Not phrased as a threat. Wrapped in concern, made to sound like reasonable fatherly reminding. But the message beneath it was clear. Stay in your lane. Don't exist too loudly. Your sister has class. Remember your role. My hands trembled. But I didn't reply. Instead, I packed my bag for the following evening. Charged my phone to 100%, put Nix's recommended speaker adapter in the small side pocket, checked that my 3 selected audio clips were saved correctly and clearly labeled. placed the 2 envelopes at the bottom. Inside each one, a check covering the exact amount that relative had sent Dad. A short handwritten note. Just a few sentences. No drama. I checked everything twice. Then I stood in front of my mirror, said the words I needed to say to myself quietly. No yelling, no begging, no emotion for him to point at, just truth. Calm, complete, undeniable truth. Then I got into bed, slept better than I had in months. The restaurant was exactly what Dad liked. Nice lighting, high ceilings, the kind of place that made people sit straighter automatically. Dad and his partner's friends were already there when I arrived. Familiar faces from our extended family circle mixed with the new ones. Dad had arranged the seating himself. Opal was beside him. Close. Center stage. I was at the far end, near the window. So you're not overwhelmed, Dad said when he saw me noticing. Voice light, a smile for the room, overwhelmed. Another careful word for dramatic person needs separate management. I smiled back, sat down. Veda was near the middle of the table. She met my eyes briefly. Her expression was the same careful one from last week. Dad ordered wine, poured generously for the people near him, made a show of filling Opal's glass first. My classy girl, he said warmly. Then his eyes found me down the table. And my little drama production, he added. Light, fawn-sounding, like it was affectionate. Laughter moved around the table. I felt my heartbeat in my ears, but my face stayed completely still because I knew exactly what was coming later, and I was ready. Dad stood mid-meal, tapped his glass like someone who had been waiting for the moment all evening. The table quieted, the way tables always did for him. I'm a very lucky man, he said. Warm voice, genuine seeming. 2 daughters, both so different, both so, he paused for effect, themselves. Soft laughter. He smiled at Opal. 1 daughter has class. He gestured toward her. Real, genuine, earned class. Applause. A few warm comments from the partner's friends who didn't know us. Then he turned to me, slowly, the familiar sparkle returning to his eyes. And 1 has drama. Laughter rippled through the table. My stomach tightened. But I stood up. The laughter stopped. The table went quiet in a different way. Uncertain. Watching. Dad's smile flickered. His eyes changed slightly. He'd expected emotion, maybe tears, maybe a sharp response he could shake his head at. Not movement. Not calm. I said, keeping my voice polite and steady, before we label anyone tonight, I'd like to play something for the table. Dad laughed immediately. Here we go, he said, already framing it, already narrating, already trying to control what it looked like before it happened. I didn't react to that. I reached into my bag. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I'd expected them to shake. Had half expected my voice to wobble when the moment actually arrived, but my hands were steady as I pulled out my phone and connected the small speaker adapter. The waitstaff paused nearby. Veda's hand stopped moving above her plate. Opal leaned forward, whispered my name. Calix, don't. Not a command, a plea. Dad was smiling, the smile he wore when he thought I was about to prove his point. When he thought I was about to create exactly the scene he'd predicted for a week. He was excited. He thought this was going to be his moment. That was the part he hadn't calculated. He'd never had to calculate it before. He'd never seen me come prepared. I adjusted the volume on the small speaker, checked the first file was queued, took 1 breath, looked at Dad's still smiling face, and pressed play. The table went silent enough that everyone could hear the phone connection click before the audio started. And then Dad's voice filled the speaker, and I watched his face change in real time. The first clip lasted 18 seconds. Dad's voice, clear, relaxed, completely comfortable. You always take the bait. That's exactly why it's so easy to call you dramatic. A sharp inhale cut through the table. Someone set a glass down too hard. The sound was very loud in the quiet. Dad's smile collapsed. That's taken completely out of context, he said immediately. Voice tightening. There's more context, I said gently. His hands gripped the edge of the table. Around him, faces were doing different things. Some confused, some stunned, some carefully neutral, while their eyes worked quickly through what they'd just heard. Dad said something else. But I wasn't listening carefully because I was watching Opal. Her face was pale, completely still. She'd heard him say it. Heard him admit to a strategy. Heard the word easy used about manipulating his own daughter. Veda wasn't looking at Dad. She was looking at the speaker on the table like it might say something else. Dad tried to recover. turned to the room. She records private conversations. Voice rising. Designed to redirect. Designed to make my action the center of attention instead of his words. I stayed still. There's more, I said. The second clip was longer. 24 seconds. Dad's voice again. Lower this time. More certain. The tone he used when he thought he was being reasonable. Stop making me look bad. That's all I need from you. Just stop making me look bad. A pause in the recording. Then, I only need you to stay in your lane, Calix. That's it. That's the whole thing. The table was completely silent. No thin laughter. No nervous chuckling. The kind of silence that meant people were doing something with what they'd heard. Processing. Adjusting. Dad opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. I paused the audio. Looked slowly around the table. That's why I'm labeled drama, I said. My voice quiet. Completely controlled. Not because I'm unstable. Not because I spiral. Because I don't stay in the lane he drew for me. Dad's face had gone red. He was building toward something. I could see it. The gathering energy of a man who'd lost control of a room and needed it back. He opened his mouth. I said, there's one more thing. And reached into my bag for the envelopes. I placed both envelopes on the table. Then I played the final clip. Dad's voice. Low and smooth. The voice he used when he was being generous. Calix is going through a hard time again. I've been covering some of her bills quietly. If you have anything you could contribute, she doesn't know I'm asking. I don't want her to feel like a burden. The audio ended. Into the silence, one of the relatives at the table, my aunt, said in a voice that came out very small, "That's what you told me." Dad's voice cracked. I was protecting the family. From what? I said. Calm. Even. I looked at my aunt. I never received any money. I've been paying my own bills for 3 years. Her eyes filled. I slid both envelopes forward. I'm returning what he collected, I said, to both relatives. I'm sorry you were misled. That was never your fault. Dad stood up so fast his chair scraped back. The sound cut through the room. This is drama, he said. Loud. Certain. Pointing at me, and then someone at the table said it. Quiet voice. Careful. No, this is evidence. The word landed like something final, like a door closing cleanly. I didn't argue. Didn't add anything to the silence that followed. Dad looked around the table, face red, eyes moving from person to person, searching for the nods and sympathetic looks that usually arrived when he needed them. They didn't come. Opal was crying silently. Small tears. She was staring at the envelopes on the table. Veda's face was pale. Her expression was the one people wore when they were revising something they'd believed entirely. Dad tried one more time. She records people privately. That's who she is. That's what drama looks like. I nodded once, kept my voice completely level. I recorded threats and manipulation to protect myself from both of them, continuing. Then I looked at Opal. Just her. You don't have to perform class to deserve love, I said quietly. That was never true. Her sob caught in her throat. I picked up my bag, smoothed my napkin and placed it neatly on the table. Looked at the room one final time. I won't be discussed this way again, I said. My voice didn't shake. That was the part that mattered most. Not the evidence, not the envelopes, not the recordings. The fact that my voice was completely steady when I said it. Then I turned and walked out, while Dad was still standing, still searching for a punchline that wasn't coming. The aftermath was messy, but it wasn't mine to carry anymore. Dad's texts arrived in waves, angry first. Then explanatory. Then long messages about context and love and being misunderstood. Then one that was almost an apology. Then threats about telling people things. It didn't work, because the room had already heard him, and the room's memory was not something he could re-record. Opal stopped responding to Dad for a while. Not dramatically. Not with an announcement. She just went quiet on his calls. Started taking more time before responding to messages. She texted me one evening, late, just 3 words. I'm processing this, I replied. Take all the time you need. Veda ended things with Dad quietly. I heard from a mutual acquaintance. No scene, no explanation required. She'd simply decided she wasn't interested in building something with a man who needed one daughter as a prop and the other as a villain. I moved forward. Therapy. Steady work. Friendships I'd been neglecting while I managed his moods. Holidays without auditions. The next Thanksgiving, I didn't go to Dad's table. I hosted a small dinner with Nix and 3 friends who had never once weaponized my emotions against me. The peace at that table was so complete it felt like music. Dad could keep calling me drama. There was no one left in the room to perform for.